involved or just introduce yourself or say hi in the chat. And then when it comes to Q&A, you can also raise your hand and ask questions. And yeah, so I'll just get started by sharing my screen with just a few slides. Okay, so this is the African Woods Regional event that we'd like to welcome you to. It's been organized by different organizations. So this includes MARI, the dLab in Tanzania, the ASBCB, which is the African Society for Bioinformatics and Computational Biology, and Eshrei Bayanet. So Eshrei Bayanet is a, I'll just introduce you to what that is, and then the others can explain, Hadia is going to explain her institution. So Eshrei Bayanet is a Pan-African Bioinformatics network that we've been running for, can't believe, almost 9 years now. And it has been set up to build capacity for bioinformatics and specifically genomics research in Africa. And actually I'm going to share my video so you can see me at the same time. And Eshrei Bayanet is, we have 27 institutions across Africa and 1 in the US. And we have more than 200 different members. So while we're not specifically data science, we employ a lot of data science techniques in our work. And obviously data science is extremely important in bioinformatics. So we're just one of the organizers. And as I say, dLab, MARI, and ASBCB are the others. But including specific individuals, Pabalo Choko, who's from Eshrei Bayanet, has been absolutely instrumental in the organization of this event, running around with all the communication, setting up everything. And without him, I think this would not take place. We also have extremely amazing input from Caleb Kibbett from SCP in Kenya, Makhadia Tunga, who you're going to hear from next, Jackie O'Neill and Amel Gula. So they've all been on the organization committee, and many of us are WiDS ambassadors in Africa. And of course, we've always had good support from, WiDS Central, what we'll call it, specifically Judy Logan. So thanks again to all the organizers. I will be doing thanks at the end. So the aim of this event is to sort of follow on from an event we had last in 2018. It was the last time we teamed up, and the only time we teamed up with WiDS for an Eshrei Bayanet African event, and that was very successful. This event this year is aimed at women in data science, including students and staff in academia, government, and industry, and anybody basically who's interested from these fields in data science. And even though we're talking about women in data science, all genders are welcome. So we've got a great lineup of women speakers, but all the topics are very, very much of interest to males as well. So the aim is to engage with this diverse group of amazing women in data science through panel discussions and talks and a keynote. We want you to do some networking, so meet each other, find some other data science females in the industry and chat to them. Data science is extremely broad, so it'd be nice to match bioinformaticians up with people working in data science in very different fields. We want to do advocacy and really promote data science in Africa, especially for women. So up until yesterday, we had 360 people, more than 360 people registered to attend the event. This covers more than 27 different countries, and I was amazed to see it covers 5 continents. So we are stretching not just Africa, but North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia, which is just amazing. And people coming from academia, industry, and government. So we have reached the aim of addressing people from all these different industries or different sectors. So the event itself, we have 13 female speakers from these 7 countries. So again, a broad geographical spread of speakers and participants. We have a combination of talks, a panel discussion on the impacts of the pandemic on women in data science. And then we're very excited to have a keynote from UCT's Vice Chancellor, Mamokgethi Bakeng. And then we'll have a networking session. And then, of course, this is in between the Stanford event. And we all know that today is Women's Day, so we're celebrating that. So there's a few suggestions for tweeting. There's some hashtags there, and you can tag our page, the WiDS Africa page. And we really hope that the event is exciting, that we have a broad range of topics, particularly looking at the impact of COVID and the pandemic, but generally on the challenges and excitements and opportunities for women in data science, particularly in Africa. So now I'll hand over to Macharia, who is also going to help with the opening, and will introduce the first speaker. And I wish you a very enjoyable event. Khadia, you there?
Hello.
Oh, there you are.
Hello, I am Hadia Tunga from Tanzania, East Africa, co-founder and director data science research and capacity development at Tanzania Data Lab. I'm so much excited to moderate this session today, along with Nikki and other ambassadors. So just to give a brief on dLab, dLab's main vision is to ensure data is being used at different levels for decision making and informed policy. And we started running WiDS session in 2018, starting with WiDS Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And this year we are excited because it's the first ever WiDS Africa that we are joining hand with H3A Bionet and Mari. So we are so much excited to have you all here today. So without further ado, I would want to welcome Amel. I would want to welcome Amel, who is going to do the opening talk. Dr. Amel is from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who supports the coordination of data science for public health program in Africa, India, Brazil. Amel also has a background in computing with PhD in bioinformatics. Amel is also an open science and open education advocate. She's awarded an open science fellowship from Mozilla Foundation, and she was nominated as 50 women who are making the internet a better place. Amel also is the vice president for Africa Society of Bioinformatics and Computational Biology, and the founder of Tech Innovation Tunisia, the nonprofit dedicated to teaching young girls coding and entrepreneurship. To make it short, she's involved in a number of international efforts to address the digital technologies issues. So without any further ado, welcome Amel for the opening talk. Amel, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madia, for this introduction. Hi, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. It's really great to be here today. And thanks again, Pabalo and Caleb, for all the efforts you put in to bring all this community together. You would have to bear with me. It's 4 a.m. here in Seattle, where I'm based, so my voice really gets slowly better as I get speaking. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the programs I'm helping coordinating that are around the use of data science to answer public health challenges. And I run this program for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So Madia introduced a little bit my background, but I tried to think a little bit about how to best represent my career path and my background. And I found this image quite representative of the path I followed. I mean, I'm still halfway through this complex path, but I have a background in computer sciences for management, and then did a PhD in bioinformatics. I then worked for H3A Bionet that has been presented by Nikki, and I was based at my home country, Pasteur Institute in Tunis. While I was working for H3A Bionet, I also launched Technovation Tunisia, which is an NGO dedicated to teaching young girls coding. And the idea of teaching these young girls coding was to teach girls that they can use science, technology, and coding to solve community issues that are around them. But we also taught them entrepreneurship skills and communication skills. So they don't only learn how to code, but they also learn how to tell their story, how to get confidence along the way. So we trained over 2,000 girls within 3 years in Tunisia, and this is part of an international program that is also available in different countries in Africa. Then after my H3A Bionet experience, I moved a little bit from the other side of the research, working on research funding and management. And I support the coordination of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Data Science Grand Challenges program. And this program basically started in Brazil, leveraging a lot of the available administrative and health data to help answer questions that are related to maternal, newborn, and child health. So the program started in Brazil, and then went to Africa and India. And so in these different regions, we have more than 36 funded projects. And as I mentioned, the main aim of this project is to leverage all existing health and administrative data to use different data science methods to answer complex research questions. So basically my role is to try to get all these teams work together. And so data is basically the center of all these research programs that we're running in the different regions. But to be able to work on data, we need to obviously to have data scientists who have the skills to analyze the data, but we also try to get public health experts collaborating so closely with data scientists in order to better leverage these open data sets available. And also, we also work a lot on getting these data scientists and public health experts collaborate with different policymakers and different stakeholders in the different regions in order to translate their findings into policies and make sure there is impact on the ground. Another thing we also work a lot on is to try to get data custodians or data generators heavily involved throughout the process. And what really happens is that this cycle and the strong collaborations between all these different parties really allows for a strong impact on the ground, but we also heard a lot from the different data custodians that they get a sort of return on investment in the sense that they learn a lot about their data, and this process and working very closely with data scientists and domain experts really allows them to improve the quality of the data and also the data collection processes. I wanted to share a couple of examples of some of these data science for maternal health projects that we work with. And these two projects I'll be highlighting are both from Brazil. As I mentioned earlier, Brazil was the region that started first. So the results from the first round came a few months ago. So this first project is a project by Dr. Carolina Barberi, who basically used some regional vaccination data to try to do a mapping of vaccines in the different areas in Brazil, and how that vaccination data and how this vaccination data could be used in order to study other health problems in the different regions. So the data Carolina used is a data set that was within the Ministry of Health, but has never been used the way she used to extract that information and allow for reuse to study other health problems. The second project I wanted to highlight is project by Professor Muriel Goubert, and it's a project that focused on trying to understand the nutrition and the situation of children in different regions in Brazil, basically considering different factors: nutrition, safety and security, health, access to education, etc. And the reason why I'm sharing this is this is a very interesting project in so many different ways. And they also spent a lot of time thinking about how to communicate their results to different stakeholders. They spent a lot of time working with data designers in order to communicate their results. And this project is working very closely with different regional health authorities who are putting into practice their results. They also won a bunch of awards in terms of communicating data science through visualization. What I wanted to touch on next is as we work with a lot of these projects in these different countries, there's definitely a lot that is happening in the countries, in the sense that we try to get all the data that is collected in that country analyzed by scientists who are based in these countries and who have the skills and who really understand the characteristics of the data and also understand the problems on the ground. There's still a gap to be addressed. And I want to talk a little bit about the gaps and the sort of digital divide, and how sometimes also we really need to think more carefully about the context. So if we try to think about the context, and again, here I'm talking more about the context in terms of building tools for public health, like building data science tools to understand public health challenges. So if we think about the context in low and middle income countries, like in most of the African countries included, there's a huge skills gap in terms of data scientists, but also in terms of training and digital skills for the healthcare workforce, who tend to be quite often really buried with a lot of administrative burden and do not really have enough digital skills. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that these health workers are, at the end of the day, those who are collecting data. Some other aspects that are challenging are the fact that obviously when we work with health data or any other type of data, we did a lot with information privacy and data protection, and quite often in LMIC's processes are very complex and aren't very straightforward. So data scientists often are not aware of all these frameworks. There is also a big disconnect between different disciplines. Like people who are trained as computer scientists often do not have a good understanding of other topics, do not have a good understanding of ethics, for example, and all the data protection laws. Often also researchers or developers are just so focusing on developing code and do not have a very good understanding of the communities they're studying. And quite often results do not necessarily benefit the studied community, but most often benefit researchers. I'm not saying it's the case everywhere. The situation is changing, but I just wanted to share these few thoughts that are still hampering the progress of really leveraging the use of data science for public health. And often when we talk about the use of data science for public health, we talk a lot about data, and we think that having a representative set of data is key, like having a representative population and a sample of the population is key. But if we think about all the gaps and the processes via which the data is collected, we might still be carrying some bias. And when we carry this bias in the data, if we ignore this bias and build models that are sort of not really taken into consideration that bias, we will be just amplifying the bias that will also be carried throughout the results. So I think a key for that is really to try to think about building processes that are really focusing on multidisciplinary and inclusive co-creation that is human-centered and really adapted to the context. And also push for openness to increase accessibility, transparency, and contribution by having code and tools available. It really allows for more transparency and accessibility and engagement of different people and different scientists from different expertise. I think it is really also key to engage different groups in the development process, including people from different disciplines, but also the studied community, and including patients, advocacy organizations, etc. That's really key to improve the process. There are a lot of successful examples in the continent and elsewhere in the world. It is also really key to think about embedding. Sorry, it seems to.
Black Nigga.
It is also key to think about different values and priorities to be embedded in the design. To conclude, I would say increasing diversity throughout the knowledge production process. Allah Akbar! It's not enough to have data scientists just taking data and applying machine learning methods to analyze data. It's really key to increase diversity throughout the process, diversity in terms of gender, diversity in terms of skills throughout the whole process to lead to meaningful tools that could really help bring public health research questions. My second conclusion is to really insist on the fact that it's really important to invest in people, training enough people, and really create inclusive and welcoming environments that welcome different skills, different contributions, considering all diversity criteria. To conclude, also, I want to invite you to check the ISCB Africa ISBCB conference we will be hosting early June. It's hosted by ISCB, the International Society of Computational Biology, in collaboration with the African Society for Bioinformatics and Computational Biology. There's a call open for abstracts. We welcome applications of data science for biology and biomedical research in general. With that, thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Amel, for the insightful presentation. All I would encourage you to write questions on the chat in case you have any. I see one question from Nawal. She's asking, how is the acceptance of data science within the community in the third world country, taking into the account different local barrier and belief and scarcity of proper IT tools? Amel?
Sure. Let me just think about it for a little bit. Not sure what, thanks for your question, Noel. Not sure I understand what you mean by the different local barriers. Go ahead and activate your mic if you're willing to.
So maybe I think as she unmute herself, I think maybe she was referring, I think, go on, Nawal.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Well, what I meant about the different barriers is local barriers. Basically, we are in Africa, so we know we have cultural barriers. We have different perceptions from different populations, you know, and then when you reach in an environment, sometimes we have beliefs of proper, this is just out of the blue. There are some countries where they believe in proper work, they go in 9 to 5 office and everything, but when you come with IT, they do not actually see, it's like they don't see the work on computer. They see they want paperwork and all that. And also beliefs, you know, with girls, sometimes they are communities who are not open to girls going to school and so on and so forth. That's actually what I meant. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for clarifying. There are definitely a lot of barriers, and I'm going to share a couple of examples. When I ran the program for young girls, teaching them how to code in Tunisia, Tunisia is, it's in North Africa. It really varies from one region to the other, but there are in some regions, people aren't still open to having girls being educated, especially in what they call computer-related things. And so one of the reasons is because they don't trust girls just spending a lot of time on the computers and having access to the internet, because obviously they can control everything. And so one of the ways we went around that was to really get parents involved in the discussions. When we ran workshops, it was good to bring all these like all the parents together to see what the girls were working on. I think it is really changing a little bit in terms of openness and acceptance for different disciplines that aren't traditionally meant to be for women. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Amel. And I just wanted to give also an insight from the program that we are running. It's called Code Like a Girl program, where we train young girls on coding skills. And then we realized those who were coming to the lab are only those where parents were elites. So we had to also act proactively by introducing another program called Smart Girls, where we reach out to the community schools. And the idea is to change perception at the very early stage so that the mindset is changed at the very early stage. And I like the point of Amel, including the parents, because they also have to be aware of what is going on, but it's also important we start at the early stage so that these are the future parents, so that they can be able to take the right action. I know there are other questions on the chat. I think I'll just give you 30 seconds to respond, Amel, on how can women be effective in data science in the underdeveloped countries. I'm going to give you 30 seconds.
Sure, yeah. I think there are a lot of successful examples of women data scientists in working in developing countries. To my opinion, a key for being effective, being successful, is having access to good projects and especially real world data based projects, but also really collaborate with different disciplines. Like if you're working on data around agricultural data, for example, I think collaborating with experts is really key. And so I would say access to good projects and also collaborating, being open to collaborations with others is really key. And I think it's valid for both women and males data scientists.
Yeah, thank you, Amel. I like the idea that doing like challenge-based driven, applying the skills on real-world challenges, and you can directly create an impact while learning. Elizabeth, you can ask a question. I give you 30 seconds to ask a question, and I'll give Amel 30 seconds to respond. Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yes. Hello. Please, can you hear me?
We can.
All right. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Amel. So I have two questions. I'll quickly fit them into the 30 seconds. The first one is, you made a very important point about the digital skills training for healthcare staff. I mean, the fact that they are burdened with administrative work, yet they are the ones that collect the data. I think that was very important. So I wanted to find out, do you think that it's more about equipping them with these digital skills? I know it's important, but should we really do it? Or you think some standalone application should be developed to assist them with it? And the second one was to find out from your perspectives, how do you think that data scientists or researchers who have, the data science capacity can work with healthcare workers, within the clinical settings to enhance, the patient care? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elizabeth, for these questions. I definitely think supporting healthcare workers with digital skills training is really key, but it's not enough, because if we think about healthcare workers collecting data, for example, they're also interacting with patients who are in a lot of rural areas. We're often dealing with illiterate people. So it's not really enough to have digital skills, but to also have what I would call data literacy, understanding the impact that the collection process has in terms of the data you're collecting needs to be clean, because that's going to be used for analysis, and that's how interpretations are going to be based. So I definitely think data and digital literacy are key, but also really, again, working in collaborations with different other parties. And your second point was around how data scientists could improve the process. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I would say collaborations, to my opinion, is really key. Like having data scientists collaborating with people who are collecting the data, but also interacting with patients and domain experts like doctors is really key to improve the whole process and also lead to more meaningful results that could really benefit communities and do not do harm if just used not in a proper way.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amel. And I like the point that we need to we need to train them on digital, not only digital literacy skills, but also data literacy skills. It's very important because if we don't do that, they become just couriers, taking just like the data is passing them to the next stage. But if we train them on the quality of data, on the analysis, and how will that impact their work, it can also improve the overall quality. Thank you very much, Amel, for taking part in this conference. I know you'll also speak next. So for now, thank you very much, Amel.
Thank you, Madia. Thanks, everyone.
The next panel is moderated by Verena. The panel is regarding on impact of pandemic on women in data science. We all know how is challenging, especially in African settings where women are representative of social events. Women are represented. Women have to do home tasks at the same time official tasks. Now with the effect of pandemic, we are going to have a discussion featuring brilliant women in science. Welcome, Verena.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to quickly switch on my camera so that you can all see me. Hi, everyone. So it's really exciting for me to be here today moderating this session. I have just prepared a couple of slides, nothing fancy, to just get us going. So today's panel discussion, and the first panel discussion for today, will focus on the impacts of the pandemic on women in data science, as Maharia has just introduced us to. And I thought a really nice way for us to kickstart this session is to actually get involved in a sort of word association exercise or word cloud event. So I've set up something on menti.com. So for those of you who have the ability to do this, I would like you all to please participate in this task or activity. Please visit www.menti.com. I've got it displayed here on the screen. And please use this code that we've got here on the screen, 88772765, and just jot down one word or a couple of words that come to mind when you think about the effect that the pandemic had on women in data science. And I'm going to just quickly switch to sharing the results for those of you that do begin to start entering your words or phrases, and we can see them being populated as we progress with the session. So hopefully that's fine. Nothing coming in yet, but I hope that some of you will begin to enter a few words here. And you can all see my screen with the word cloud active. I just want to check that you are all seeing my screen. Okay, thank you, Caleb, for sharing the link and the code.
So
I'm going to assume that you can all
slides. We can't see this. We can't see the Menti results. We can see your slides.
Okay, sure. Let me just stop sharing and switch back. Okay, nothing's still coming through, but I'll just share it in the meantime in case anybody does begin to add some words or some phrases. I think it would be really nice to also drive discussion and questions later on. So please do begin to share some phrases and so on. And I'll keep this in share. So to get this discussion started, we thought we would start by a little opening phrase to get the creative juices flowing and to get the discussion going. And then we'll go right into a few questions, which we will pose to the panelists after they've introduced themselves. So let's start with a little sort of phrase to just nudge you and get you thinking in the right way. So I would like to start by saying that women worldwide tend to be at a much greater disadvantage during crises as compared to men. And while COVID-19 has shone a spotlight on the imperfect equality, diversity, and inclusion efforts within the workplace in developed countries, this situation is quite a bit heightened for women in developing countries. And so it's really an opportune time for us to have this discussion and to get some inputs from some really, really wonderful and incredible women in data science. And I'm going to start by asking the panelists to introduce themselves one by one. We've got 3 wonderful panelists on the line today, which is Shania Che. Rihab Wangari could unfortunately not make it, and she does apologize for not being able to be here today. Then we have Ruth Betha and Dominique. So Shania, could I start with you? Shania, could you please offer up just a quick introduction of yourself, just 1 minute?
Thanks, Verena. My name is Shania Che, and I work at the intersection of tech, policy, and gender. And I have been working as a researcher, so that's my understanding of data, but also currently looking at artificial intelligence, privacy, and data protection from a feminist perspective. And thank you for having me on the panel.
It's really wonderful to have you here. Next, I will ask Ruth Betha Katuele. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your names incorrectly, and please do correct me if I am pronouncing it incorrectly. Ruth Betha, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself? Ruth Betha, are you here?
I just got a text from Ruth Betha. I think she's failing to unmute. We can go to next, and then I can.
Okay, sure. Not a problem. Not a problem. We'll wait for it to get online. So the next panelist that we've got is Dominique Anderson. Dominique, would you like to just quickly go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone, and happy International Women's Day. And thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this panel. So I'm a researcher at the South African National Bioinformatics Institute. I'm also a team lead for biocollection informatics, and my other areas of interest are the transdisciplinary areas of One Health and metagenomics. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dominique, and it's really great to have you all here today. So I'm going to start with the first sort of easiest question and most basic question that I would like to pose. Sorry. Oh, hi, Ruth Betha is here. Great. Hi, Ruth Betha.
Hello. Thank you, Verena. Hello,
Thank you
everyone.
very much for making time to join us today. We were just busy with a quick round of introductions. So while you are here in time, would you like to just quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ruth Betha Katuele. I'm a lecturer in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. I am responsible with teaching, research, and consultancy in the field of computer science, and I'm actually supervising a lot of students who are working in data science research.
Great, thank you so much. So all 3 of our panelists are here, so we'll start with the first question. I'm going to ask the panelists just 1 or 2 questions, but you are more than welcome to hop in and ask your questions to the panelists at any point in time. I will then randomly choose a few questions from the chat box if there are too many, and we'll see how many we can get through. But I'm going to get the discussion started by asking the very first question, which is the most basic question, and that is, how did the pandemic actually affect your work? I'll start with Dominique. Let's go Dominique first, then Shania, then Ruth Betha.
So the pandemic definitely influenced, work. It was, there's no doubt about it. I think, in the beginning, especially here in South Africa, when we started on lockdown level 5, we were very much under the impression that we would just have this 5-week period and then everything would return back to normal. And I think in the beginning of that stage, we spent a lot of time trying to keep up with research. We spent a lot of time trying to keep up with news. And it was less of an issue in terms of trying to figure out different ways to mitigate a year-long influence on work. So I think that during that time period, we were just sort of, we were naively thinking this would pass quite quickly. And so it did have an impact. And I think that what's become like even more of an impact now is the fact that we have to now really find ways to mitigate the length of this pandemic. And on top of it, it's also when you have students, you also have this, when this extended period starts happening, you also have to find ways to try and to prevent the anxiety in your students, because there's so much uncertainty. And there's uncertainty for you as a researcher, there's uncertainty for the students that you're supposed to mentor and support. So it definitely has like a very, very big impact. And I think the impact, it's less of an impact if you already have research that deals with data sets that are already currently available. But if you have projects where you're actually generating data from scratch and you're not allowed to go into clinical settings and you're not allowed to go and get samples and those sort of things, I think that's where the greatest impact has been in terms of the knock-on effect on the data science as well.
Thank you, Dominique. And I think you've hit the nail on the head with regards to teaching and the uncertainty. I think we've all experienced different levels of that, both as researchers and some of us as students. So I'm on both sides of that bandwagon. I'm both a student and I'm working. So for me, the uncertainty was really something that was really difficult to deal with. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Shania, we'll move on to you. Please tell me if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly as well.
No, it's fine. You're pronouncing it correctly. Okay. Yes, I think for me and my work, having been working around tech issues for a long time, the pandemic really catapulted the need for digital inclusion within the space. And it also highlighted the need for data. So you needed the data for the technological solutions and trying to understand the pandemic. But at the same time, there were also data-driven solutions such as contact tracing or the use of artificial intelligence to diagnose the different levels of the pandemic without the necessary protections around privacy and data protection. So what we really came to light was like there was a need for technology to be used in this context, but the safety nets that were needed were not being put in place. And I think, for example, one thing that we often struggle to talk about was the issues around online safety for women in their different capacities. And a clear example is what we just experienced around the invasion of the Zoom room and the use of racial slurs and sexist language and misogynistic language. And before, it was quite difficult to talk about this in like data spaces or like in technological innovation spaces, because it wasn't a lived reality if you were not a woman. But yet in this instance, we're people on a panel and our different genders, and we constantly experience this. So for me, the impact of the pandemic is that it brought to the forefront the need to have the appropriate technological measures put in place, but at the same time, the need to have safety nets around privacy, data protection, and also people generally having access to information, because there's a lot of misinformation that was being put out, and the systems that were developed to there were a lot of responses from social media companies to flag misinformation and disinformation around COVID as a way to protect the space. But before that, it was quite difficult to get these companies to build data systems that, systems based on this kind of data to respond to these issues. So that for me has been like the double-edged sword when I think about how the pandemic impacted my work, the need for more data, but at the same time in getting that data, the need for protections to be put in place so that people are not exploited during the pandemic.
Great, thank you so much. And I totally agree. When it comes to online security, ethics with data sharing, data privacy, there's a lot of growth and a lot of room for growth and coming together and collaborating and finding useful solutions and finding solutions that work, especially in Africa, because they are quite different often the solutions that we have as compared to more westernized countries. So I think that's also a very good point that you raise, especially the need and the disparities in technological ability, I think, across Africa. But I'm going to probe that in the next question. So I'm going to put a pin in that there and just go move on now to Ruth Betha. Ruth Betha, how has the pandemic affected your work?
Okay, thank you, Verena. The pandemic has definitely affected my daily routine, as we had to shift to online mode of teaching and virtual meetings, on which it was sometimes hard to even conduct lectures and participate in online meetings, especially in case of a power cut and unstable network connection. As we all know, we are in developing countries where our electricity is not that much stable. But also, despite of having so many limitations or negative impacts on the pandemic that has caused in our work, but it's also associated with some advantages. For example, it was very good for me for not being involved in daily traffic, as I used to commute from home to work. Thus, I was able to finish the work early at home and had enough time for house chores. And I was also able to attend various conferences and meetings virtually without worrying about the travel costs and other logistics. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Ruth-Betha. And I think a lot of us can attest to being happier about the lack of having to sit in traffic anymore. I myself used to spend between 3 and 4 hours in traffic every day, and that's 3 or 4 hours that I get to work now. So, I mean, to me, that's been one of the best bonuses living in Cape Town in a CBD. The lack of traffic and needing to sit in traffic was a big plus for me, I must say. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I think a lot of you have sort of alluded to this with your answers, but I think one of the things that the pandemic really reinforced was the digital divide and disparities in terms of access to technology in developing countries, whether you were a woman or a man for that matter. Those disparities still existed. So the question to the panel then is, are there any remedial measures, including policies, that have been developed now to address some of this? Are you aware of that? Or what would you suggest would be a good way to begin to take that step or move forward? Are there any remedial measures you can immediately think of that have come about or come to light as a result of the pandemic that could help with some of these disparities? For example, I know hybrid learning, for example, really took off during the pandemic, but are there other such measures or remedial measures, but especially linked to policy, that we can turn to and look to for assistance on trying to remediate some of these issues? I'm not sure if any of you would specifically like to start. Dominique, I see you unmuting yourself, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a very big technological divide, and it's not even just between different countries, it's actually within countries as well. So, you know, here by us, I mean, we really came to the realization that the technological divide, just in terms of students not having the kind of access that we all assume someone would have, and that being on campus is actually kind of like a lifeline for them in terms of their family life, in terms of having internet access, in terms of even having something as simple as electricity. And I think that was something that maybe people took for granted before, but the pandemic really highlighted this. And I think it really required us to really be human first, you know what I mean? To sort of, to look at the sort of status quo of performance and outputs and all those that sort of thing, but then say, you know what, we actually have to be human first and reevaluate what these outputs actually mean for someone. So it's, and how difficult it is to achieve certain outputs without those resources. So I think it was really important for us to develop things. So at University of the Western Cape, we had a situation where we said that no student would be left behind. And, you know, it was up to sort of high level people to go and discuss how we were going to actually accommodate students that were not as privileged as others, you know, and that were definitely put out of place because of the pandemic and having to return home. So I think that's a very, very important thing. And I think that going forward, we need to have more policy that says that, you know, that creates this inclusive environment, and that recognizes that not everybody is actually in the same boat during the storm. You know, we're all in the same storm, but we're all on different boats. Some of us are on rafts, some of us are on yachts, you know, so it's really a big thing that, like, I think we need to understand that we must be human first.
Thank you, Dominique. Shania, I know you were unmuting yourself as well, and I think you would have some great insights here too. So anything to add to what Dominique has said, or you want to build upon what she said?
Yeah, I mean, like, I really love the last point that Dominic raised. Like, we are experiencing this, some are on like rafts, some are on yachts. And that was, for me, has been one of the key issues in thinking about the policy recommendations, that what we've seen and what we've realized is that when the pandemic started, everyone thought, oh, this is the great equalizer. It wasn't, because the reality is that what it played out in a context of already existent inequalities. So the policy solutions that some of us have been pushing for a very long time has been trying to ensure affordability of the internet, right? So as everyone was trying to get on connected and everyone was being told you're going to be doing online schooling, the cost of data was still very expensive just to connect to the internet. So that also is a particular issue. So we did see some solutions that South Africa in particular passed us a policy recommendation that already had been existent, where there would be like lifeline data that people would receive. But in other countries, we didn't see that happening. And then we also have the quality of connection. I don't know how many times I've gotten into Zoom calls where it's like, oh, my internet has dropped, or, you know, someone freezes. And that also really was an issue, where then some policymakers then released spectrum, which has always been argued as it would improve the quality of connection. But again, it's something that we didn't see consistently across countries. We saw it happening in particular countries, but this is a conversation that had been existent way before the pandemic happened, right? And then you also have the issue around, I mean, like, I really stress this, but the issue of online safety, where it's a matter of like, you know, when the Zoom attacks started happening, initially Zoom's policy solution was, if you pay for it, we'll make it more secure. But what does it mean for everybody else who can't afford to be paying a $14 subscription every month, let alone might not have the credit card to put up the system? So for me, that's also another issue of that they were online safety issues that needed to be put forward. And thinking about data in particular, where, for example, in South Africa, the online domestic violence bill act was being amended, and it was an opportunity for us to actually put forward a position that the data that's going to be collected as they're putting forward a technological solution for people to report on these platforms needs to be protected. And at the same time, we have to recognize that these platforms also are spaces where gender-based violence may also happen. And I think another policy solution that we often, you know, like think about is also skills, which was mentioned by the first opening speaker, the need to raise the digital skills and capacity of people as they're on these platforms. These has either happened, you know, organically, where governments are meant to have a lot of money channeled towards digital skills. But what has happened is that a lot of the training has been happening peer-to-peer. We are literally teaching our family members to use platforms where they weren't using them before. And at the same time, we're trying to get governments to not just roll out laptops and computers, but to also think about skills and capacities. And I think the final thing, which is always important for me to stress, is also thinking about like policy solutions around wellness. And this can be at company level or at organizational level, where I think towards the end of last year, a new phrase emerged, which was Zoom fatigue. And then when you think about it, the number of meetings, yes, we're now able to interact more and attend sessions that we couldn't attend before, but it also has an impact on consistently being connected via screens, you know, meeting after meeting. So the question of like companies putting into place wellness policies where some people were like, you know, Fridays, there are no meetings because every other day we have a meeting. So that for me is, I think about the policy solutions at the different levels at an individual, company and government perspective that need to be put in place during this pandemic.
Thank you so much. That was really a well-rounded answer. Actually, you've touched on a lot of key points, and I'm glad that you have, because surprisingly, we are actually almost out of time. We haven't even had that much time to get into things, and we're already out of time, which is great because it means that the discussion was flowing really well, and we have a lot to say, which is always a good thing. So Ruth-Betha, I haven't given you an opportunity to answer this question, so I'm going to first jump to you. We are almost out of time, so I would like to take one question from the audience at the very least. So after Ruth-Betha, we'll take one audience question, which I've got on the side here already. It's a very simple question and does actually cover the last question I wanted to ask quite well as well. So then we'll end off with that question. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but we'll have a networking event at the end of the session where we are also, of course, encouraged to come and interact, ask questions and learn from each other. So Ruth-Betha, I'm first going to hand over to you before we move on to the audience question.
Okay, I just have one point to add. To mitigate the digital inequalities, I think we need to think on how to create a space for innovation on the offline tools. How could we really use the offline tools like radio, TV programs, a newspaper on different activities, including teaching, research, and other kind of stuff. So we need to utilize, we need to think on how we can really use those offline tools for effective activities. Yeah.
Thank you actually for that, because that actually takes us quite nicely into the final question for today. So Winifred actually asked in the chat, what do you think can be done to better prepare women in data science, especially in the case of another pandemic, not of a better pandemic, we don't need better pandemics, but in the case of another pandemic, what do you think can be done to prepare women, and what role can women play in data science? So Shania, or Ruth Betha, you've been called on last quite a few times now. So Ruth Betha, why don't you go first on this question? I think it's a very good question.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think we need to stay at the four point. We need actually to have first acquire the skill sets, which will help us to do the research in the data science. As Amelia said earlier, we need to think on how we can collaborate with different people in the research or industries and other stakeholders. So we need to think about that. And we also need to think of we need to understand our inner strength, the commitment on how to work on the data science on overall. So we actually need to somehow come out of our shells, out of our comfort zone, because I believe we can do everything as long as we are committed. Yeah.
That's a really, really nice, short and sweet answer, and a really fantastic answer as well. Shania, do you want to go next?
Sure. I think for me, it's 3 points. The need to ensure that there's collaborative work with people from other humanities and social sciences backgrounds. Secondly, to actually fund women in data science with whatever projects that they come up with that are likely to be responsive to the issues at hand, not just sexy projects that, would get easier funding. And then thirdly, I think it's important to ensure that there are support infrastructures that allow for women in data science to actually take the lead and actually develop necessary solutions, because we know the inequalities within the data science community in terms of representation of women. And so therefore, it's important that there are support infrastructures that allow for this community to actually be responsive to any issues.
Great. So then we'll end off with Dominique. Dominique?
So it's a very, very good question. And I think that this pandemic has really prepared us to have some foresight going forward, because I think we're well aware that, this is not the first time, it might not be the last time. But I think it's prepared us to try and put things in place that will serve us in the future. One big thing that I feel is that, especially considering just the anthropological issues that women in general are experiencing during the pandemic, like a lack of schooling or gender-based violence or things like that, it's going to be even more important that we encourage more young girls and women to enter the science stream, which is already a male-dominated field. So I think it's up to us women to become bigger champions to encourage young girls and women to enter the stream. Not only that, is if we have this thing in place where we're asking women to come into the science stream, is we have to have very, very good policies in place to support them. And I think it's also important future-wise is the status quo of how we measure successful scientists or successful researchers needs to be evaluated in terms of the impact that it has had on women. So for example, you might not have the 700 outputs that you are usually measured against, and there needs to be sort of consideration for that. There needs to be consideration for more flexibility going forward. Greater flexibility when you're evaluating women in leadership positions and promotions, to understand that there are other metrics which can be used to promote women in this sort of line. And it's just, we need to just really accommodate women, because they do face different challenges to the sort of male scientists. And I just think it's important that we recognize that and we have these conversations, and that women also become more higher, they fit in more higher decision-making bodies as well.
Definitely, definitely. I think you've all touched on various aspects of the same point, and I think that's great because you all are looking at it from a different perspective, and that is really wonderful. One of the things that I just want to end off with is that one of the things that's very apparent in all of your answers is preparedness. We need to prepare, and we need to be well prepared, and we need to support each other and collaborate as part of that preparation. And I think without collaboration, we're really not going to go very far. And that's one of the key things I think that the pandemic has really highlighted, is that collaboration is still not where it needs to be for us to tackle these kinds of pandemics and events well enough to actually have it be, truly impactful and help everyone. And that's very difficult at the moment. But I think we are improving, and it's highlighted a lot of issues. And so when we find issues, we can address them. And so I think that from that perspective, we are at a unique sort of precipice to not repeat our past mistakes. Although we probably will as humans, we're at the point where we can move forward together. I must say I'm quite disappointed in this word cloud. There's so many negative things being said here. I just want to end off with the word cloud because we started with it, and now having had this discussion, I hope your mindset has changed a little bit from all these negative connotations, stress, increased inequality. I'm sorry to read that there's domestic violence on you, but of course that is a factor. It's a real thing that we all need to deal with as part of our daily lives for many women. There's things like fight for time to work. That is very disappointing, I think, as women, that you need to fight for time to work, that it's not as accessible. Time is not as accessible to everybody. And so I think that you should look at this word cloud and really take note of the words that have been put here. And let's work together as women in data science to make sure that during the next pandemic, women are not faced with these words and connotations and feelings. It should be better by then, hopefully. So at least 50% of these words should be positive after the next pandemic is my hope. And so I will stop there because we are out of time. So Makhadia, I'll hand over to you. And I would just like to say a very, very big thank you to all the panelists for all of your very amazing and useful insights and for making time to be here today. I'm very excited to be here. You can see I talk a lot. So I'm very excited about this event, and I really hope that you guys enjoy the rest of it. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of it.
Thank you very much, Verena. That was such an insightful discussion, and I think we have all learned a lot. I like the idea. I mean, the point raised that we were naive to think that the pandemic is going to quickly end, but yeah, we have to figure a way on how to live with the pandemic. Think of online safety, think of offline tools, etc. It was such an insightful panel. And when I looked at the visual regarding the point that we are raised, multitasking and childcare, I think most women can testify during lockdown. That was the key issue. Thank you very much, Verena. So next is going to be Samer Elsher, who is going to talk on graduating during a pandemic. So Samer is a postdoctoral researcher from Cape Town University with an interest in bioinformatics and imaging genetics. Samer also is a tutor at the African Institute of Mathematical Sciences, who also volunteer to teach at the carpentries. Welcome, Samuel. You have 7 minutes for presentation, and you have 2 minutes reserved for question. Thank you, Karibu Amel.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Tamara Sheikh. I am currently a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Cape Town, and I also recently joined the Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto to continue doing my research there. So I'm going to be presenting on graduating during the pandemic. And as we have already mentioned that, and early studies have has shown that across all disciplines, women's population rate has fallen relative to men's amid the pandemic. So these were very early results from March, April 2020, as we can see in the orange color here, how many maybe, or the rate of the publications for women scientists as compared to an earlier rates in 2019 and early 2020. So this is when the lockdown started and when the pandemic started to hit hard the world. So we found all ourselves in that situation, and we found ourselves trying to deal with it. And we all in research or in academia have expectations. So for someone who is doing a postgrad studies or doing PhD, masters, we will have so many challenges that can vary at different levels. So the first thing that we happen to face is the suspension of all in-person interactions. So we are not going into classes, we're not meeting our supervisors physically, and we have to start adapting to work from home or remotely. We have to move everything online, start to work from home, and most of us are not fully equipped from home to do our research. And also we have the lab and room capacity as the regulations started to change. So some of us needs to do a wet lab and get a wet lab experiments and get some results, and we have still capacity. So like besides the normal challenges that you have to do your booking and come at specific time, there's still like capacity for related to the pandemic, and that all caused our results to be delayed, and other also unpredicted changes and regulations that we are facing every day, and we have to deal with all that. So I try to put together, and besides all that, women has very specific challenges that men don't face. We have kids to take care of. We have a lot of things that came new with the pandemic, that kids are not going to school. So we have to, as women, start adapting to both working from home and taking care of the kids and their own challenges. And with all that, I try to put together some of the maybe recommendations or how to adapt with these situations. And the first thing is that the pandemic presents as well many opportunities. So try to think also positively about it. So we're working from home. We're no longer going to work. We're no longer using that time to go and that time to come or to prepare. So we have a little bit of more time that we can use to prepare ourselves better, or to maybe read more publications in the field, and refine our goals, set our objectives for the next experiment if you're doing work like a wet lab work. And also we have a little bit of time to socialize with family and friends, and that's also recommended during this time, not to be alone, and to spend also some time away. Like if you are feeling very maybe overwhelmed, take a break and come back stronger, come back more fresh. And remember always that you are not alone. The pandemic is affecting not only you and your lab, but it's also affecting the whole universities, affecting the countries, affecting the whole world. And also try to be resilient. So resilience is very important here, to keep reminding yourself of all the above, and as well to try to learn to be resilient and to expect all the previous challenges that were mentioned. And most importantly, that we are facing a lot of problems that are new to all of us. So talk to people. Everyone's experience is different. Everyone has some recommendations to share with you. So for example, here I try to remember all what my other colleagues has faced and how did they recommend when I spoke to them. So this will always help, and also be thankful. And remember that it will all one day be over. The world has already started to vaccinate people, and we have more than 3 vaccines that are starting to be taken worldwide. And for my personal story, when the pandemic started to hit hard and before the lockdown, that's when I already finished writing my PhD thesis, and I managed to submit my PhD thesis on the 10th of February 2020, after which the lockdown started all over the world, and examiners started to get busy, and also the university started to find regulations to adapt to the pandemic. And from February 10th, I only managed to graduate on December 15th. So it's like almost 11 months, the whole process of getting the results from my examination, addressing the results, sending it back to the university, and then the university approving my PhD. So it took 11 months that it usually takes maybe 4 months, sometimes less, sometimes a bit more. But these are the challenges we need to adapt ourselves with. And with that, I want to thank my supervisors for supporting me. I would like to thank the University Vice Chancellor for supporting all the graduates, even though the graduation was virtual, but UCT managed to give us an opportunity to take pictures, and my family for coming all the way from Sudan to spend that time with me. Thank you so much. And
Thank you. Thank you so much, Samar. I think that was inspiring, despite all the challenges, but you are able to graduate during the pandemic. And I also thank you for sharing the key issue that are facing not only women, but all students. The fact that we don't have that networking, the physical distractions, the physical interactions, the point that you raise, which is very important regarding the lab tools, and especially like those of us living in Africa and developing world, sometimes you need a lab because you need a computer that have high capacity, and you might be home, and that is also a challenge. So I really understand what you are facing. I'm also a PhD in data science student, so I understand how tough it is to work at home. And I like the points that you shared, not only shared the challenges, but how to adapt to the situation. And the key thing that I left with, that we are not alone. It's okay to ask for help. And also we can use that time to for our own personal issue, take time away, etc. I think that was very useful. And congratulations once again. So Amel, why is Amel in my mind? Samar, you have a question from audience. Can a data manager become a data scientist?
Well, a data scientist is I like to think about data science and mathematical sciences and statistics as a tool that people can learn to apply in so many fields. I work in the health sciences and medical field. I do bioinformatics, but I could have chosen to do something else. It's a skill that everyone can learn. And yes, the answer is yes. I myself assist and provide some teaching to researchers with the carpentries. So I can see people who don't know anything about programming or data science starting to learn it, and it's impressive. So yeah, you can do anything.
Thank you very much, Samer. And I like the point that data science is a tool, and the fact that people from different backgrounds can become data scientists, so long as they learn the core skills, programming, mathematics. Because as you said, data science is really a tool, because we need to have data scientists. In the medical field, we need to have data scientists in chemistry, mechanical, everywhere we need data scientists, because they are able to understand the context. So yes, a data manager, they can be able to upgrade themselves. Everything is possible, and pursue their future, their career in data science. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Samer. Next, we have Helen Maziku and Catherine Kress on launching your career as data science consultant. So this panel featuring brilliant women in data science space who are going to tell us how can we find our way into the data science consultants space. So both speakers will have 7 minutes each, and then we'll follow up with 2 minutes each for the question, if any. So Helen, you are next. Helen is a data scientist from University of Dar es Salaam, but also Helen is the project manager for Y4C Hub, which is funded by UNICEF, in which they are using data-driven approach to apply data science skills for undergrad students. So that point, try to catch or to build an appetite at very early stage. So once again, Helen, welcome.
Thank you so much. Can you see me? Can I be seen? Yes, sorry. So because of the tech issues, I'm using both my phone and my laptop. That's why maybe I couldn't be unmuted. It's very nice to be here in this conference of great minds and great women at the first ever conference, if I may say. As Mahadia has said, my name is Dr. Helen Maziku. I'm from the University of Dar es Salaam, College of ICT. I do lecture in algorithms and complexity, but then also because I did computer engineering and IT, so I also do teach computer architectures. But then I do manage a hub of innovators, youth innovators, both masters and undergraduates, working on very many different challenges from the society. So one of the means we use is data science. We use very many other means, security and other means, but one of the means is data science. I also do manage or like supervise 8 students, masters and PhD, who are working in various areas, including data science, especially machine learning. So as I was listening to the talk, there's a question that someone just asked right now about, I think that's can a data manager be a data scientist? So maybe we can leave that to the end, but I wanted to kind of, because I have just 7 minutes, I wanted to kind of just give key points on how we can launch as women, on how we can launch our careers as data scientists. I've just summarized some few points, but I'll expound on them. So the first number one thing that I would share is we always have to specialize. We have to know what we want to do. When you're offering services, especially in data science, you have to know what you are offering. For example, are they models? Are you developing models? Are you maybe just helping to optimize maybe sales and operations within a company? Are you developing decision? Are you offering decision support using tools and data science? So you have to understand what you want, because you can't do everything. So at the end of the day, when somebody is when we do, I think one of the reasons that we fail to launch our careers or like to make them take off is because I want to do everything. At the end of the day, you cannot do everything. So even when it comes to technologies, you want to do Python, you want to do pandas, you want to do all the scalable databases, you want to do all the programming, you want to handle the data, you want to visualize the data, you want to know all the machine learning algorithms from SVN. You can't know everything. So it's when you put yourself out there to offer everything, you will do, but it will not be that good. It will be you will end up being kind of like mediocre in everything, but not good at one thing. So I would urge us to be able to specialize, and especially maybe if I talk about specializing, have your area, your domain challenge area. Is it data science for health? Is it data science to support decisions? Is it data science for energy? Is it data science for cloud? I've seen consultants who just work on migrating, maybe using data science to migrate data to the cloud. There's a lot of data science that has been used in that area. So it is important to be able to kind of like map out an area that it's because, for instance, I've had some challenges when I've been consulting. Maybe you are in a team and you're one of the members, maybe you're not a lead, and it's maybe a science, health-related service that you're supposed to offer. Maybe somebody says we need to apply for ethical clearance. We need to be able to understand the sensitivity of the data, because this is case data. And maybe somebody else is doing the cloud, so they never understand all these lingos and all these terms. So you cannot do everything. So if you know that I'm interested in health-related data science services, so it will help you to actually be keen with everything, to understand, to learn. From the, maybe for example, disease modeling. I came to realize during Corona that how scientists model, data scientists collaborate with maybe epidemiologists to model disease is different from how we do this other modeling into statistical modeling. So I cannot emphasize more than this, that try to find that area and go deep, like go deep in that area and then be known at that. So when they look up, when they're looking up at different consultants to consult in that area, then they will think of you immediately. And then another thing, which is general, I don't think it's related that much to science alone. I think it's just general as women to be consultants. I think authenticity is very important. I have seen work, maybe a consultant is given a job to do, and then from the beginning of the contract, maybe to the end, the work is not excellent, it's not authentic. So one of the things that one of the observations that I've seen is planning. From the time you sign that contract, always make sure that at your fingertips, the terms of reference are within your fingertips. You know exactly what's required of you. So it will help you to kind of like, it will guide you, to shape you. Sometimes as women, it's a good thing. It's a double-edged sword. As women, we want to offer, So sometimes the job description says maybe you will work with women or maybe of age group this and this. And then you go beyond, maybe you go beyond, you find so many people, and then it takes you a lot of time from the data collection to be able to get this report, to interview them, and then you're going beyond. So you have to be able to, from the time you do that.
Helen, can you stay close to the mic, because we cannot hear you very well.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me here now?
Yes, I think Pablo raised a hand. Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you. You just have to stay closer to the mic.
Thank you so much. I'll step closer to the mic. So, as I was saying, so you have to plan from the time you're signing that contract, reviewing to the time you're looking at those requirements. So make sure that you plan. For example, once you sign the contract, develop that schedule. There are so many tools, Gantt charts. Develop that schedule, flag it to the client, and be very bold on those dates and those deliverables. Meet those deliverables. If you said I'm going to do a validation of these requirements, by the time, or maybe I'm going to actually look at the data, maybe there's some existing data, we're going to go through it and identify some issues. Make sure that you stick to that timetable. You stick to the plan, and then also that goes along with time management. Time management, this will translate you to deliver your work early. You see, we are women. I have 3 children, 3 years old, 2 years old, 6 months old. I am married. I am teaching. I'm a lecturer here. I do consult. There's a lot going on. Maybe some social, we are African women. Sometimes there are some social events we're supposed to lead. Eventually, it just goes without saying. No one ever said it, but we're expected to lead such events. So maybe there's something, a social event in your community and all this. So maybe there's a funeral, there's something. You're supposed to manage all this. So you need to plan.
Helen, 1 minute.
Yes.
1 minute to time. Can you summarize?
Yes. So then there's also team management. So once you consult, we expect your career to take off, and that means we expect your portfolio to grow. We expect you to offer more services. You're not going to be able to do everything alone. You're supposed to have to identify, I don't say talent, but people on your team who can fill the gaps. Maybe people who are public speaking, some people can do political evaluation, some people can do documentation well, stuff like that. So be proactive with this. Just spot these gaps and be able to fill them in. And then learn to co-create, use existing tools. And then the last part that I want to talk about is be current. Right now we are having this amazing data science conference, and then but also there are so many other networking events. There are webinars that exist, there are workshops that happen, there are conferences. Make sure you attend those so that you can be able to kind of keep current, to read and to understand. So so this just in a nutshell that I'm sharing. I hope that somebody has picked something, 1 or 2. Yes, Mahadia, I'll leave it up to you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you very much for that such insightful presentation. And I like the idea that you stressed on find your niche, like everybody has to have an area of expertise so that you can focus and be able to excel in that particular area. So I like that very much. And yeah, and congratulations for the hard work you are keeping with the 3 toddlers. So Catherine, if you allow me, I would want to first allow the keynote and then to take round 2 of the session. Is that okay with you, Catherine?
That's fine. That's fine.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for being that flexible. So we will pose our questions for this particular session, and then we'll ask after the keynote. So you can just continue typing the questions in the chat, but we would like to go to the keynote speech. So the next is the keynote speak from the University of Cape Town Vice Chancellor. We are very much glad to have you, Mamoheti. you correct me if I mispronounce your name, Professor. So Mamoketi is a Vice Chancellor of University of Cape Town. She has won numerous awards for her research and community work, including the Order of Baobab, conferred on her by the President of South Africa in 2016, and also in August 2014, CEO magazine named her the most influential women academic in Africa. And in August 2016, she was awarded the prestigious Businesswoman of the Year Award in Education category. And in 2019, a University of Bristol conferred on her honorary doctorate in science in cognition of her leadership role in mathematics education in South Africa. Mamoketi is the founder of Adapt Learner Foundation, a non-profit organization that started in 2014, providing financial and education support to students from township and rural areas acquire higher education qualification. And she has also served as a member of several boards. As you have heard, she has done a lot of work, not only in her career, but also in dedicating her work in assisting graduate students, university students. I've also seen a couple of her videos in YouTube on how she's dedicated to help young women and men to climb their ladder in their career. So Mamoketi, I'm very much fan of what you do, and you inspire me a lot. Welcome.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. Dumelang, Sanbonani, Molweni, thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. And I really appreciate your generosity in scheduling me at a time that is suitable. I am humbled by that. Thank you very much. As a woman scientist and a leader in higher education, I have to salute the organizers of Women in Data Science for what you're doing to transform this sector. Data science is a relatively new field, and so it is surprising that in many ways it reflects very traditional views about women's roles in information and the future of the world. So I'm excited to share with you what I believe is significant about the role of women in data science. In my mind, the significance of women in data science is not only about unleashing women's potential. While that is an important goal of the organization, in my view, your real significance is much wider. It is about unleashing human potential around the world. Because if we are not including women in this important sector, we are missing at least half of the picture data science needs to show us about ourselves and our world. And that oversight can lead to harmful consequences. And here's an example. It is a fact that wearing seatbelts prevents the wearer from being thrown out of a car during an accident. But the statistics are different for men, for women, and for children. According to recent research using different sizes of crash test dummies, women who wear seatbelts in a car are 17% more likely to die than men. And they are 47% more likely to receive a serious injury and are 71% more likely to receive a moderate injury than men who wear seatbelts in similar car crashes. Children have a higher possibility for head, abdominal, chest, pelvic, and leg injuries in a vehicle accident while wearing seatbelts. This is because in the 1960s, when seatbelt legislation was first imposed on car manufacturers, the car makers chose to test only for crash test dummies that were the same size as the average male driver. Back then, of course, men accounted for 76% of the average miles driven in a vehicle. In 2010, however, researchers found that more than 50% of drivers are now women. So they now test different sizes of crash test dummies in cars. In this digital age, information is a raw resource for understanding our world and making clear-eyed decisions about our future. Data science equips and trains us to collect, analyze, and manage that information. But if data science's focus is skewed, if it relies on only a slice of our human population to draw up the questions we ask, to collate and analyze the responses and provide informed analysis, then data science runs the risk, very real risk, of gathering incomplete data and misinterpreting it. To gain a holistic view of our world, we need to consider the many different voices and perspectives that the world holds. When data science offers a limited viewpoint, it means that across the planet, we are rushing into a very rapidly changing future with one eye shut and the other eye only partially open. To steer us into the future with both eyes fully open, data science needs to include the perspectives of women, of course, and Africans, and other races, and people who grew up in poor communities, and people with disabilities, people who represent different sexualities, cultures, religions, and languages. A few years ago, university protesters across South Africa coined a phrase that we need to apply across data science: nothing about us without us. Average statistics across multiple studies show that women fill less than 20% of data scientists' roles. A recent report by Forbes says that women data analysts comprise only 18% of leadership positions at premier tech companies, while only 13.8% of women in the sector have authored artificial intelligence-related research papers, and less than a quarter of women in the sector are considered to be AI professionals. The irony is that the fast-growing data science industry has suffered from a skills gap over the last few years, even though employers have been eager to tap into fresh sources of talent among women and other demographic groups around the world. Of course, data science is not the only STEM sector that is dominated by men. In South Africa, women account for only 28% of science researchers. And out of 4,177 researchers with ratings by the National Research Foundation, only 146 are African women. The Department of Higher Education, Science and Innovation found that Black women academics were the most underrepresented group in the sector at 16.1%. This gives an idea of how unusual African women researchers are in South Africa. And those of you who are at the University of Cape Town know about Vision 2030 and our proposed new institutional strategy, which is built around 3 pillars that are fundamental to UCT's academic project: excellence, transformation, and sustainability. It focuses on UCT's identity as a global university in Africa that is committed to unleashing human potential to create a fair and just society. To unleash our human potential, we need to recognize, identify, and address the ways we have leashed our potential as human beings. By leashing our potential as individuals, we also leash the potential of organizations we work for, and of entire sectors such as data science. For instance, industry analysts warn that male-dominated data science ignores the possibility of inherent bias that men and women may bring to analyzing and interpreting information. Gender difference in brain structure and function is a relatively new area of study, and the ramifications of the research are open to debate. However, neuroscientists have logged physiological differences between male and female brains. As one report puts it, men and women appear to have different ways to encode memories, sense emotions, recognize faces, solve certain problems, and make decisions. Since the brain controls cognition and behaviors, these gender-related functional differences may be associated with the gender-specific structure of the brain. Analysts point out that these differences mean that interpretations and biases between the two genders can be significant, especially when it comes to the analysis and input of data. And this is a critical concern when it comes to data science dominated by male points of view. On the other hand, different ways of thinking can help data analysis to achieve a more accurate consensus about the data that is presented. Of course, humans bring other kinds of inherent bias into data analysis. Joy Bualamini, a Ghanaian American computer scientist and digital activist based at the MIT Media Lab, founded the Algorithmic Justice League to challenge bias in the decision-making software. Her research has found that facial recognition error rates in commercial AI services are only 0.8% for light-skinned males, but 34.7% for dark-skinned females. This was attributed to a lack of awareness on the part of data scientists that prevents AI from maturing. A report in Forbes says organizations will always fail to harness the full capacity of the digital innovations without including women, as machine learning technologies will be fed a constant stream of biased data, producing junk results that are not reflective of the full picture, causing potentially catastrophic harm to organizations. And this quote can also apply to ethnic and national inclusivity. A survey on diversity in US data and analytics in 2020 to 2021 reports that only about 3% of data scientists in the US identify as Black. Women can bring approaches to data analysis that address issues that have been overlooked. This is partly because of the traditional roles women have held in households and societies. Advocacy organizations like the United Nations have noted the critical role women play in establishing positive change in their families and communities, because they tend to be more attuned than men to the needs of children, the elderly, people with disabilities, and other marginalized groups. They bring an important outlook to the STEM careers that will help drive economic innovation, social well-being, inclusive growth, and sustainable development in our society. For instance, the leading cause of childhood death in South Africa is road accidents. UCT civil engineering professor Marianne van der Schuren is doing research on reducing child injuries and fatalities on South Africa's roads. In conjunction with UCT's Division of Pediatric Surgery, another woman engineer, Professor Genevieve Langdon at the University of Sheffield in the UK, she was director of the Blast Impact and Survivability Research Unit at UCT for 5 years. In that capacity, she led an initiative to reduce injuries and deaths among civilians and children that result from landmines that are detonated accidentally. For instance, by children playing soccer in a field in Angola or Mozambique. This threat affects millions of people globally, particularly in low and middle income countries recovering from warfare. Women in STEM sectors around the world share many of the same challenges, such as being in the minority. The Alliance for Accelerating Excellence in Science in Africa, a partnership of the African Academy of Sciences and the African Union Development Agency, undertook a study on why African women did not pursue STEM careers. To summarize, the main barriers were pressure from family responsibilities, patriarchal attitudes in society, unconducive work environments, and low remuneration relative to men in the same position. As women in STEM, we have to work harder to prove ourselves. We are often given the admin and support tasks while our male colleagues are sent to work in the field. We're expected to become one of the boys to fit into our work culture. Our leadership is held to a different standard, and we hear people say things like, well, A guy CEO would have said that, wouldn't have said that. The glass ceiling looms above us. We may feel we have to choose between raising a family and developing a career, a choice we never see a man having to take. We long for role models who look like us. We recognize these challenges, and we are dealing with them, in part by creating networks like Women in Data Science. On a daily basis, we deal with the institutionalized power of masculinity combined with white privilege, what feminist scholar Phumla Dineo-Qola refers to as the expectation that women should adapt to the current system, being empowered into position rather than transforming the formal workspace into a space that is more receptive to women's contributions, needs, and wants. In such an environment, the Black African women leader particularly is an outsider. I believe this is what Phumla Dineo-Qola refers to when she writes about invisibilization of women's real transformative work. But being invisible, assimilating into the male environment, fitting in, is not good for women, and we should not do it. It is not good for data science, and it is not good for unleashing the diversity of human potential around the world. The report about the critical need for diversity in data science presents women with the opportunity to carve out our own identity as data scientists by making a place for yourself, a place that reflects who you are, not who the industry expects you to be. You can pave the way for others who are as unique as you are to change the industry and the world. Women in data science in Africa and other developing nations face an additional challenge. We need to advocate for capacity development in our home countries, because if we create opportunities to develop economic growth and employment for our communities, we open up the new markets that will use our services. This means we seek ways to help others enter our fields and develop applications that can lead to new businesses. It means we uphold the ethical standards of research collaboration that promote capacity building in our educational institutions and research agencies. It means we disrupt the old patterns of thinking that led to helicopter science, the practice in which foreign researchers come into a community in Africa, take samples and data, and then return home to process and analyze the data in their own institutions without making that data available to African researchers. Professor Nikki Mulder, who welcomed you to this conference earlier today, has written extensively about the challenges of sustaining big data analysis in Africa. As she and her research partners emphasize, this sector requires a cohort of well-supported researchers at senior and junior levels, plus a pipeline of graduate students and postdoctoral fellows in a research landscape that is dangerously under-resourced and under-financed. This is a challenge that all of us need to address. It is part of our struggle as women in science. To transform the global data science sector, we need to unleash all of our human potential across the gender divide, the racial divide, the sexual identity divide, all the artificial boundaries we have set up to justify the divisions in our global society. Women in data science, women in any science, are transformation specialists, simply by virtue of being women in their chosen field. Because data science is a relatively new field, we are only scratching the surface of the ways it can help humanity. You, as a transformation specialist in your field, can explore new ways. For instance, data science in helping us to fight COVID-19, from tracking cases and deaths, to understanding how populations move during travel restrictions, to vaccine design. The Harvard Data Science Initiative is working to support faculty members, students, and fellows in designing and applying the tools of statistics and computer science and creating a community to foster the flow of ideas for using data science for social impact. One of the recurring themes that has been revealed in surveys of men and women in science and technology is that women tend to place a higher value on applied impact-driven work that men do. And because of this, women seem to avoid data science because they don't see its potential for making a positive impact on people's lives. A recent study by BCG found that a very significant share of STEM students across countries appear to have a less than positive view of the work content and culture of data science. Their view, interpreted bluntly, is that data science feels abstract and without sufficient purpose, and that the culture seems overly nerdy and competitive. And this perception, in turn, discourages women from entering the field. Data science started as a male-dominated branch of technology from the global north, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And it would be dangerous for it to stay that way. African researchers are expert at adapting new technologies for use in African settings that have limited resources. We can do the same with data science. African women are uniquely placed to improve people's lives through this sector. We have a close understanding of what kinds of questions need to be asked, how to work with local communities to get the information researchers need, how to interpret the cultural significance of that data and how it might influence scientific outcomes, and how to present key findings so that they can be useful to policymakers, business stakeholders, and the community. One of the many development agencies have started asking, one of the questions many development agencies have started asking since COVID-19 came into the world is how we can meet the sustainable development goals set by the UN for the year 2030. If the pandemic has a silver lining, I believe it is this. It has made the global north aware of how much poverty and inequality exists within its own borders. It has demonstrated that meeting the SDGs truly is a global necessity, not just for poor countries. Rich countries are just as vulnerable. Rory Horner, a researcher in globalization and political economy at the University of Manchester, wrote as early as January 2018, the universality of the SDGs and the Paris Climate Agreement of December 2015, as well as the necessity of confronting planetary boundaries for human development, highlights the limitations of the North-South divide of international development. That the blurring of the boundaries between developed and developing countries is now formally recognized is evident in the World Bank announcement of April 2016, that it will no longer distinguish between the two groups in its annual World Development Indicators. As more new research requires multidisciplined approach to address the world's wicked problems, data scientists are going to play an even stronger role in helping fellow scientists to understand the nuances that need to be addressed. Women in data science today are uniquely placed to step into the gaps within the industry and help lead the sector into paths where it can help to unleash human potential into the world. That is a formidable task, one that is worthy of women in data science, and I look forward to seeing how you take up the challenge. Thank you very much and all the best as you continue with engagements in this conference. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think everyone is agreeing that was such an inspirational talk. And I like the point that you stressed by giving an example on how it is important to have female data scientists, especially when you talked about the seatbelt for women and children. Clearly shows that there is biasness in the models that are being developed because they have only considered one factor. So we need women to be at the forefront so that we are being represented. And I like the way you have kept the statistics, that the way the statistics have shifted from 1960 when the legislation was passed, when we had over 60% of men drivers, but now in 2010, the world has shifted and we have more female drivers. So clearly clearly that shows that there is a need to have female data scientists. And I like the point that you stressed on again, that we should not try to fit in, but rather we should strive for the excellence, because women in data science should play the role in the transformation process. Thank you very much for that. I have one question for you though. So I wanted to understand what role is the UCT, University of Cape Town, playing in making sure that we have a pipeline of female data scientists, because with all these facts, clearly we need to have a rich pipeline of female data scientists.
Yeah, good question. I'm sure if you read carefully in the publications that come from UCT, you'll know that in 2018, August, we launched what we call For Women by Women. It's a 21 million Rand project. We publish calls for people to apply so that they can grants and be funded for 5 years as a first instance for human capital development for women. So whoever, the projects are open only for women, and whoever wins the grant can only hire women. So the money that comes out of that, they can only hire women, and the students that get funded from those projects can only be women. Of course, the downside is we didn't get any applications from data science. But the nature of data science is such that within those projects, we've got 5 projects that are led by women in this For Women by Women projects. It is possible that we'll have data scientists in that space. This is just the first round. Our determination to develop women in science is much bigger than the 5 years. And I have to say, when we published the call, by the way, there were 3 areas of focus, and we were judging them separately. The first one was that we wanted projects that focus on disciplines where women are in short supply. And we wanted to make sure that those women who are in short, the few women who are there in those areas should get the money and work with other women elsewhere. They can work with men, but not pay them from this grant, but train students. The second area was and I guess data science would be in this first area where women are in short supply. The second area was women who do research in areas of women, in areas that are related to women. And data science would have fitted in there because in the work that you do, it lends itself to that. It's just about what's the question that you'll be asking when you apply for the grant. And in the third area where we didn't get proposals was we wanted to develop scholarship of queer scholarship that challenges the gender stereotypes, scholarship that you know, let me just put it as scholarship that challenges stereotypes, because it was scholarship that researches that area of study, and whether that could be in data science or not, it would depend on the question that's been asked. We didn't get anyone in that question. And of course, the researchers had to be women or trans or people who identify as trans or women. So that's a little that we're doing, but that's the first 5 years of For Women by Women. It's a major project that is funded through the VC strategic funds. And every August, we report on what we're doing in terms of, and my view, by the way, is that when we start developing women in science, we are also creating a possibility for a pipeline that goes into women in data science. And so my hope is that at the end of the 5 years, we can open the space specifically for women in data science and see what comes out of that. But the challenge that I'm taking from your question, by the way, is to check in the projects that we are funding, the 5 projects that we are funding, is there anyone doing data science? My sense is that it is possible. I mean, we've got researchers who are leading projects in oceanography, in human biology, I'm trying to remember the third area, and others in psychology. Yeah, so it's a wide range, the 5 that are there, and my suspicion is that there may be one who's focusing on data science. But here's the thing. I mean, the other thing that you pointed to, by the way, was that we should go into those areas. I mean, you know, it's easy for me to say, be brave and go for it. You know, I should have also said, you know, it's not going to be easy to do that. You know, breaking boundaries is disruptive. And when you're disruptive, even for good, it's very, you know, it's very difficult, you know. So you are sort of in the first generation of women in data science, if you like. I'm just saying first people who get in, you know, whilst the discipline is still new. And you break the boundaries, it's going to be tough. So as you can see, in doing this for Women by Women project, I didn't say data science specifically, because the problem of women in science is so large that I could only say women in areas that are women are in short supply. Research in areas where women are in short supply, and hope that in that band, data science would come in, you know. And that's the backlog that we're dealing with. But to be disruptive, even just investing 21 million rands in a project like that is sort of shaking stuff, because everyone needs funding, but we've got to keep pushing. But that won't be easy. And one should always remember to say, well, it's not going to be easy, but we keep pushing as women, and accept the difficulties that come with it.
I agree. It's not going to be easy. And I like the point that you made, that we need to find disruptive measures for us to be able to tackle this, in addition to the traditional measures that we are already taking. So I have three questions. One, what are the barriers you see based on your experience in your endeavors? And is there a bright future? And the last question from the audience, so how can junior scientists or researcher work together with the senior? Is there any possibility? Yeah, thank you.
All right, I mean, I think in my talk, I talked a lot about barriers. Funding is one barrier. I mean, ring-fenced funding, ring-fenced, not just open funding. I think some of these things, to solve them, you need to ring-fence the funding so that it's only open for women. Is there a bright future? But there are many barriers, by the way, because there's barriers to come in and there's barriers for once you are in. And once you are in, the barriers are common barriers. You've got to work 3 times or 100 times as hard as men to even be regarded as someone worth listening to, or being worthy of being in the team, you know. And those barriers, we've seen them all over and over again. The same barriers that are in science, you'll find them there. The question about, is there a brighter future? Somehow I'm feeling like probably for data science, there's even a much bigger chance of a brighter future, probably even quicker, because my hope is that the world realizes that without women data scientists and their beingness, which they bring to the space, the analysis and that come out of there might be limited. And therefore it might skew the decisions that we make. And so I hope that as teams sit, data analysts sit and say, but we need a woman, because they might just bring a different perspective. In the same way as us women, we should be able to sit and say, you know, but we same gender, because in this space, I think diversity is much more important, because you're dealing with information that will ultimately lead to us making decisions, and the risks of making wrong decisions or decisions that are not suitable for the space are much higher. So my hope is that the social scientists in the space keep reminding us that we need scientists. I mean, right now, we need women. Right now, there's an understanding that interdisciplinarity is what we need to solve the world's wicked problems. And in that interdisciplinarity, my hope is that you get a voice that says, well, we need more diversity here. We need women. So we've got to create space, because otherwise the decisions that we are making are not what they are. And I think it also is for us women in data science to keep raising the flag as you read the papers, as you see the limitations. You always have to see them through the lens of who you are, because as a data scientist, you probably understand what went missing here, given who's doing the analysis. So I think we can be part of creating that bright future. And how can junior scientists work together? I mean, work together with other experience. I think this is every team. I mean, junior scientists should volunteer to be in these teams. But I often think if we have a team and there are no young people in the team, I always think we are impoverished, actually. Because there's especially today, the world is changing so fast. And as someone who values the voice of young people, I can see when I'm with teams that have got no young person, that one suddenly becomes a minority in seeing certain things that adults, people who just close up to hearing young people, don't see. And how we can actually find ourselves in a very tricky situation simply because we have ignored the voice of junior scientists or young people in the space. And so for me, it's that diversity. And every time I talk about leadership, I talk about the importance of this diversity and inclusion in leadership, because it helps you see other parts that you wouldn't be able to see on your own. There are things that I wouldn't be able to see as a Black African, South African woman leading this university, a global university like UCT. I need other people who come from different cultures, who look different from me, who are different age, different experience. We can serve the university better. My view is that even in data science, you have situations such as that to be able to do analysis that stands the test of time, you probably need that. But I want to challenge junior scientists to get themselves in. Get yourself in the game. Don't worry about how much money you get. Get in the game. The idea is to be in the game. If the project doesn't have money, but they can give you an opportunity to participate, learn, get in there, don't worry about the money. You will make it if you get in there and learn. Ultimately, it pays off. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much for the insight. As always, you have been in this the whole of your presentation, and I take with me the fact that when we talk about interdisciplinary, we should also talk about diversity and inclusiveness. And us as women, we should be at the forefront when we talk about the diversity and inclusiveness. But as you mentioned, we should read the research. That means we should be well informed of what we preach so that we can talk with the evidence, with the number. And for my fellow junior scientists, I think you have raised a very good point that we should be ready to volunteer. We should value the experience that we are gaining rather than the amount of funding and the amount of funds that we have to take into the pocket. So my fellow junior scientists, I give you a challenge. As this International Women's Day, we have to choose to be challenged, and we are being challenged to make sure we are doing right networking, we are getting into the game. We do volunteer, but at any cost, we should be in the game, especially my fellow female scientists. Thank you very much, Professor. It's a pleasure to have you in this conference. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, Mahadia. All the best for the conference.
Thank you. So next we will have Catherine. So we will resume the launching careers in data science session, and we'll have Catherine Kress. So without further ado, Catherine, welcome.
Hello, hello. Let me just share my points. It's a pretty tough thing to talk after Professor Peking. Can you hear me there, Mahida?
Hello?
Yes. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, great, great. All right, and you can see me too. Let me just talk without my slide for a second. It's a very brave and inspirational things that Professor Peking said, but I have a bit of a cautionary tale about not fitting in. So a few years ago, I was working at the Center for High Performance Computing, which is part of the CSIR in South Africa. And I was the only woman in a big team of men. And I chose to not fit in by reporting corruption that was happening in the environment. And the result was they made my life so miserable that I left in despair, and they kind of made it so I was never able to get a job in academia again. So just when it comes to being brave, make sure you've got a lot of people on your side, okay? So that just kind of actually drove me to needing to find a job in data science outside of academia, which is what I've been asked to talk about here today. Let's just do that. Can you see my slide, Mahida?
Not yet, but there they are. There they are.
Okay. So yeah, as I say, I was kind of put in a position of well, desperately needing to make money, really, which is a great motivator for launching a new career. And just for those of you who are working in academia, and I think you're shifting more into a kind of industrial environment, that if you're working with data and you're extracting value from it in an academic environment, you are the kind of people that they need in industry, just in case you're scared that your academia is too different from what's happening in industry. And you will need to explain this often, okay? So you need to be prepared to explain that what you're doing in academia is relevant elsewhere. And then, yeah, just sort of really extending on what Professor Peking said is you have to put yourself out there. So the way I got my first job was I offered to give a 5-minute talk at a Python conference, and then I did, fit in by going to the social events afterwards and talking to people about what I was doing, and then they invited me to give a talk, and eventually they offered me a sort of salaried job to do data science in industry. And yeah, I mean, in South Africa, there's meetups, there's LinkedIn, there's hackathons. And even now, I think with COVID, in some ways, it's a little bit easier because people are expecting you to do things online as opposed to kind of turn up. So if you're in a slightly obscure part of Africa, you can turn up online on some of these kinds of things. So that's number 2, definitely putting yourself out there. And even if you're not wanting to do a lot of coding yourself, I would definitely recommend coding practice. You go to Kaggle, you look at what real life problems are, you look at the code, and you actually try and solve problems using code. And it's towards data science, which is great, but don't just try and use the tools that other people use. So what I did is I worked through all of the pandas documentation to find out what tools were available, okay? So, and that's something I think, it's like going to the gym. You kind of need to do it every day. So even if you're managing people who are doing this stuff, you're understanding what they're encountering in their coding problems. And then kind of in industry, there's a big disconnect between the data engineers and the data scientists. But my recommendation is be a data engineer too. And this is a good way to get jobs, right? So you need to be familiar with SQL, lots of data stored in old databases where you can either go to the IT guy and ask him to get the data out for you, which takes forever, or you can learn a bit of SQL, get it out yourself, and you can run that all from with a nice Python Jupyter notebook or whatever. And I was surprised to learn this, but being very efficient to spreadsheets is good. Lots of my data came in spreadsheets. doing Linux scripting can save you kind of months of work. And very important, a lot of the data problems in industry are not solved by fancy neural networks or whatever. They're solved by like visualizing the data and organizing the data. So, you know, if you ask if there's a job for a data manager in a, as a data scientist, definitely. But as long as you can get to the point where you can explain the sort of insights that you get from those, and learning to do visualization is really important. And also dashboards, you know, if you can, so like in Python, there's some nice Python wrappers around some kind of JavaScript where we'll put things straight into a browser for people to see your results straight away. And so that's a very impressive thing to, if you can put your results in, like in a browser environment and it updates in real time. And it's not actually that difficult. So there's nice, you know, Python Dash, R as well, there's Shiny. I would recommend sort of going more for the Python just because it's more versatile on the data engineering side. Okay. And then if you're looking for jobs in industry, certainly in South Africa, I suspect it's the same in the rest of Africa, the vendors of software tools often are very close to people in other companies and will be trying to sell them fancy software tools where they'll promise that you can kind of press a artificial intelligence button and art will pop insight. So it's your role to explain to people that it's probably much better to spend money on a data scientist who understands the data rather than a sort of software tool where you say pay 2 million Rand a year license, which allows you basically to do some drag and dropping rather than kind of writing the Python code, and then it sort of calls the Python code underneath. So I would recommend that you Google data platforms and see what these kind of data platforms are providing, because that's where lots of companies are actually prepared to spend money on these kind of software tools, where I think it's actually much better that they spend the money on the people who understand the data. But make sure that you can do quite a lot of the things that are done in these data platforms in a bit of Python code, okay? So do your homework. And then probably one of the biggest jobs around is cloud engineering. So, you know, if you have a little bit of experience, say, using AWS, you know, there's some fantastic tutorials online. Get a free account, try a few things, and then at least you can say, yes, I've used AWS for whatever. Personally, I actually went back to using Google Cloud a lot after experimenting with AWS, just because it seemed every time I tried to do something on AWS, they wanted me to pay for something. But, you know, maybe that was my limitation. But actually definitely being able to say you have some cloud experience is good. And then words you should know: agile project management. Okay, unfortunately, lots of people kind of run projects in a kind of religious style with agile as a kind of religion. So you need to push back against that. The general principles are good, but these, you know, the sort of general approach to project management in industry with agile, sprints, scrum masters, you should look at that. Just make sure you know what the words mean. And then also understanding containers, container orchestration, and maybe something like Jira, the kind of ticketing systems that people use. But just as my kind of final comment here is that if you are working in academic science is cool, okay? And, you know, getting people to buy more stuff or borrow more money, I think ultimately is less cool. That's not to say I haven't worked on some cool other data science projects, but like, you know, in public safety and this kind of thing, which are quite inspiring. But don't underestimate how cool it is to be doing real academic science, where for me, I was an astrophysicist discovering, you know, the nature of dark matter and stuff. Okay, I'm going to stop there and take some questions.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I think that was very insightful, and I understand you have stressed on the point that as junior scientists, we need to keep learning, because whatever you were explaining, and then I just got into mind that we need to update our skills. We need to understand what is in the game, and we need to constantly learn. I like the idea you spot out that we need to be data engineers too, because oftentimes we'll need to request data, but rather if we are able to learn SQL, liner scripting, we will be able to get the data ourselves and also reduce the time that we have to wait. But I also like the fact that you stress that the data scientist should also be good communicator. It's not enough to only build models, but you should be able to communicate well your insights. So I like that point too. And also, last but not least, with the experience you shared in trying to fit in, I like the idea that you are giving us all to be bold, brave, and to be able to speak up whenever necessary and timely. Thank you very much for that, Catherine. So we have one question, and I'll give you 30 seconds, like 1 minute each to respond to both speakers. So I'll start with you, Catherine. Somebody asked, can someone who works in a big data analytics be a data scientist, or is there a different professional name for someone working in big data? Yeah.
I can have a go at that one. I don't know,
Yeah.
and maybe Helen can also, but I mean,
Okay.
from my point of view, data science covers, to me, if you're working with data and you're extracting some value from it, you're doing data science, okay? Whether it's big data, small data, anything, okay? So I have a very broad definition of data science. It doesn't mean that you have to be, doing machine learning or whatever. And there are lots of people who are trying to do very complicated big models and not getting value from data. And then I say, well, that's bad data science, right? But yeah, so I definitely think big data analytics and data science, to me, these are just words that the vendors have come up with really to sell more software tools. I don't know what Helen thinks.
Yes, I agree. I agree with Catherine. So for me, I do understand data science and data data analysts. They both have the same goal. How can we use data for better decision making? That is the goal. In the market, speaking from the perspective of the industry and the market, when they label them differently, sometimes I've seen like what they mean is, as I do teach big data analytics, and so I have seen the difference from the scope of the content I teach. Mainly, we don't go that far. So what we do is make sure that this person can get the data, then prepare it so that they can find relationships, do some statistical analysis on it, then visualize the data. They don't really, for example, maybe giving an example, maybe from the database you get people who purchase bread and then people who purchase butter. So an analyst, according to the perspective of the market, an analyst will just find the relationship between the two. But a scientist, as she said about the coding and the programming, could maybe build a recommendation algorithm to say, to recommend butter according to the purchase history of people who purchase maybe bread. So the only difference I've seen is the coding. So if you a data analyst, and then you can code, you can design models, you can do all these things, you're a data scientist. It's essentially the same thing. So maybe that would be where the difference is, but otherwise, same thing. And so the conversion for those who just end on the visualizing the data and then just finding meaning on the data and doing all this, cleaning the data, if they go beyond and get onto all these algorithms and then learn how to code and everything, then you're data scientists. But I've seen people who do a lot of algorithms, a lot of coding, a lot of programming, and then they call themselves analysts. I mean, you're already a scientist. So it's complementary, they complement each other, they work together, same thing.
Thank you, Helen. I like both that you stress that these are like brands and what we put into the market so that we can attract people. But literally, they all mean almost similar thing. So, and then I have one question and I'll give it to Catherine. Catherine, we have one question from audience. What are the opportunity for fully remote work in data science consulting, even under ordinary circumstances when it's not during a pandemic?
Sure. I mean, they're really, really good, especially now. Actually, this is a positive thing that's come out of COVID, is that I actually started a new job right in the middle of COVID and had to hire a team of 12 people without meeting any of them. And they were situated all over the place. And we all worked online, and I'd never met them in person. And I had to even actually hiring them was quite difficult, because they're, it's sort of difficult to get a feel for people. But yeah, it was,
wow.
I think the opportunities are really good.
Wow, thank you. So Catherine stressed that the opportunities are real good, and she actually talk her through the her experience. But I will also be a testimony. I've also got a lot of work online without meeting any people, and worked as a consultant. And maybe just one thing, how you brand yourself is very important in getting consultants work in general. So thank you very much, both Catherine and Helen. Both sessions were insightful, and we are glad that you spare time till this time to resume the session. Thank you very much. Next is Amel. So we are going to have next session on young girls in data science, passing the baton, and being what does it mean being Black in data science. Our session is going to be moderated by Amel. Amel, welcome. You have 10 minutes for this session before we go for networking.
All right, thank you very much, Madia, and thanks, Catherine and Helen, for this sharing these insights. So as Madia said, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about young women and young girls in data science. And our speakers for these sessions are going to be Jania Adams, who is a PhD student at University of Pennsylvania, doing research in cancer genomics. And she's also very passionate about connecting women who are computational biologists, and she's the founder of Black Women in Computational Biology. And the second speaker is Winfred Gatua, and excuse me if I'm mispronouncing your names. Winfred is a master's student at UCP, Kenya, and she's also part of the East African Network for Bioinformatics. Why don't we start with Jania, if you're ready.
Hi, yes. Should we share our screen?
Let's just give Catherine a couple of minutes so that she stops sharing her screen. Sorry for that. Catherine, you're still sharing your screen. Could you please stop sharing? All right, let's try to do this. Great, can see Winfred. Is Jania here?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, cool.
Do you see our slides?
We do, yes, go ahead.
Okay. Great, well, thank you everyone, Amel, for introducing us, and the entire Women in Data Science community for inviting us here today. My name is Janae Imani Adams, and I'm here today with Winfred. Winfred, if you'd like to say hi.
Hi, I'm Winfred Gatua. Thank you.
Yes, and we are here representing the Black Women in Computational Biology Network. We're really excited to share with you today a little bit about who we are, and also more about what we are hoping to contribute to the topic of inspiring the next generation of women in data science. And it's just the slides you can see, right? Not the presenter view?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Awesome. So yes, so the Black Women in Computational Biology Network was really founded as a way for Black women in the computational and quantitative life sciences to come together, connect, and really learn from one another. I started the community to really see more people that look like me in the field and to really connect more on a broader scale outside of the US with other scientists upcoming in the field. Our mission is to amplify the voices and foster community amongst Black women in the computational biology field across the diaspora. And our vision, our goal for our future community is really a computational biology community that encourages and supports the active participation of Black women scientists across the diaspora at every professional level. We have over 140 members, nearly 200 allies, and we have membership from over 4 continents, with 20 to 30% of our membership coming from right here in Africa. And our pillars of community are resource amplification, science communication, intergenerational collaboration, critical scientific engagement, and global citizenship. Today, we'll focus on these two here, how we're really hoping to engage the scientific community in a unique way that really builds bridges with the rest of the global community across the diaspora.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And I would like to talk about our lessons and experiences from being a Black woman in data science. And one of the things that really stood out is the fact that it is very difficult being the first and the only one in the immediate environment. And therefore, as a community, we are recommending that there is more work that needs to be done, especially with regards to equity, diversity, and inclusion criteria. Besides that, is that we as Black women and also women in data science is that we face lots of barriers, as already mentioned by Prof. Basically, this includes social and also cultural barriers that hinder us from progressing in our careers in data science. And one of the things is that we realize that a number of times we feel not accepted within the data science community. And another reason is the fact that most of the time you realize that probably people may not take us very seriously as real scientists. And therefore, as a community, we are still fighting for global inclusion of all Black women scientists.
Absolutely. And some of the ways that we continue to work towards some of these goals or mitigating some of the effects of these barriers is through what we call initiative boards within the network, or basically like subcommittees that are focused on particular issues or tasks that we are moving forward in our network. One of them is the Seminar and Workshop Board. If you've heard of the Black Women in Computational Biology Network, you've probably been invited to or heard about our Black in Comp Bio seminar series, or been invited to one of our seminars or panel seminars. Here is the navigating the ethical landscape of being a Black woman scientist in big data. And we invited panelists to really just talk through and discuss and really just kind of be the interface between the scientific community and our network, and really just kind of create a safe space for engaging, for asking questions, and for learning from one another. Another way that we do this is through our Pathways to Computational Biology Board, or it used to be called our Graduate School Resources Board, but we're really broadening the scope here and focusing on what can we do to help other Black women in the field get to their next step of their career. So whether they're an undergraduate, they're looking for postgraduate opportunities, or they're a postdoc looking for that next faculty position. We're really working at the kind of like the junctions of each of those milestones and hoping to provide a bridge and share resources in those areas. So we have blogs out now that are really just focused on the graduate school experience, but we really hope to expand that to other experiences as well.
So I'm going to take you through the advantages of being a member of the Black Women in Computational Biology. And as you've realized initially, is that we're almost nearing 150 members, and therefore each member is entitled to receive a monthly newsletter, which entails the update of the community. And in addition to that, you've access to the Slack workspace with all the members in there, and also you've also got access to virtual global meetups, for instance, the seminars, the webinars, and the workshops. And in addition to that, also something like a journal club. And besides that is that with networking events, for instance, the coffee chats, ideally coffee chat entails randomly pairing individuals with a particular interest, and they get to know one another on one-on-one scale, and they are also able to grow their personal networks. In addition to that is that we also have mentoring circles, which entails individuals at different levels of professionalism, and therefore you're able to grow being an undergraduate, get to hear from a postdoc, from one in academia, from one in industry, and that motivates an individual to continually pursue their career. We also have accountability partners, and a good example is, for instance, if you're interested in applying for grad school, then you got to pair with somebody else who is working on grad school application, and each one of you is accountable to each other to ensure that you submit your application in good time. We also have a very extensive ally network. So ally, this means these are friends who do not exclusively identify as members of Black women in computational biology, but rather they are willing to be part of us and also support us in various ways to ensure that women are encouraged to pursue STEM courses. And as well, we also have collaborative learning. And as it stands, is that it's free to join the community as for now. However, in future, it will be at a subscription, which is already subsidized at a fee. Thank you. Yeah, so how does the future of Black women in computational biology look like? So we continually grow the global membership of the community, and as well, we also look forward to growing partnerships and also sponsors of our community to ensure that our programs are well learning. Then in addition to that is that we continually grow and increase the visibility of Black women in data science by allowing them to present their work. Yeah, and we add actually the data science broadly to ensure that Black women data scientists are supported within their community. And one point that I would like to stress is that if you recruit us, make sure you retain us.
Absolutely, and those are great points. And moving forward,
Sorry, if
our
you
message.
can wrap up quick.
Yes.
Oh, sure, yeah. This is our last slide. Yeah. So
yeah, I give you like 40 seconds to wrap up.
Oh, yeah. Sure, yes, absolutely. So yeah, basically our take-home message for young girls in the future is to really trust your multifaceted nature. As biological data scientists, oftentimes we come from many different backgrounds, we really want to encourage the next generation to just be brave and stick to environments where you can bring all of yourself and not have to leave some of yourself. Really feel supported in those spaces. Practice holding on to your voice early on, knowing who you are and advocating for yourself. And finally, just continue to reach as you climb. So as you get to the next level in your professional career, make sure you're uplifting and bringing along the community where you came from as well. And yes, we just wanted to thank everyone again for your time. Please follow us on Twitter, the network. Feel free to email, and here's our information individually as well. But please do visit our website and learn more about our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Winfred and Janae, for this great presentation. There are a couple of questions in the chat box. Magia, do we have a couple of minutes to take questions?
So, because the next session is networking, so I would advise is that because what is going to happen, we are going to be automatically being grouped into networking rooms. Mm-hmm. So I would, and the speakers will need to distribute them distribute themselves across rooms. So therefore, I would encourage for those who have questions to stay for the networking question and ask the speakers directly. Is that okay, Amel?
Sure, maybe just one question, because I see it coming in the chat. Just a question from Iman, who is asking if any African woman can join this network, and then we can move to the breakout rooms. If you can answer that question real quick.
Yeah, any Black woman across the globe is welcome to join. We do have many Black women based in Africa in the network as well already. So we welcome everyone who's really excited about our initiative.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, and Jenia. And I think that the audience have learned that anyone is able to join. The Black women are able to join to the network. And please stay for the networking session so that you can ask more specific section on how you can be able to join. So I'll shift over to Nikki to do a vote of thanks before we move to the networking session. Thank you very much, Winfred, engineer. I like the point that you said we should create a safe space for women, and we should be able to share resources across our network so that we can have more women in the data science field. Welcome, Nikki. Nikki? Okay, so Nikki is trying to unmute. So whenever you are ready, Nikki, you can go on.
There we go. Okay, so it was because of the crashing of the meeting, everyone was not allowed to unmute themselves, but I have been given permission now. So sorry for that. I would like to give several rounds of thanks. I'll try to be quick. So the first is to the speakers and the panelists. So I think we've heard some amazing talks just from the chats. We've seen that people have been really impressed with the presentations. A big thank you, obviously, to our keynote speaker, Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng, who I think was just completely inspirational. I want to thank the audience. I want to thank you for all your time, your input, your questions, and your participation. And we hope you'll carry on with that in the networking session. And then last but absolutely not least, the organizers. So I mentioned them in the beginning, but I want to really just say a huge thank you again to Pabalo Choka, who, because he's a male, he wasn't allowed to be involved in the actual speaking here, but he is just amazing behind the scenes and really has put this whole event together with the help of this committee. So Caleb Kibbett, Mahadia, who you've been hearing from, thank you for chairing the meeting. Jackie O'Neill has been helping us, and Amel also. So that's the organizing committee, and without them, this event would not have taken place. So I'd like you to join the networking session. It will be not too long, hopefully, but we really, I think it sounds like there's an opportunity, that a need and a want for people to speak to each other, get together, and actually form a data science community here in Africa. So that is my closing, and I do hope that you enjoy the networking session, and we'll also join the main event in Stanford. So hopefully we'll all see you there. And I'm going to hand you back now to Mahadia to figure out, to let you figure out how to get into your breakout networking sessions. So thanks once again.
Thank you very much, Nikki. So we will be automatically moved to the breakout sessions, 21 people each. And please, I would like